isn't anyone on the other side, then what's the point of there being?
Maybe I should get to this idea of idealism as holding that. This is the way I defined it before. The world is at least partly constituted by the knowing mind. This is something that is something we identified when we dealt with Felt earlier. Right? There's a way in which the world that I know has to be my world in some significant sense. If you're studying phenomenology and contemporary philosophy, you see something like this. There's a mindness to the world. Right? Hegel makes a pun on it. Right? He says, "Das Meinung ist meine." Right? Meaning is mine. Okay. But there's an important way in which the world of objects that I know is my world, and the objects I know are my objects. And that's something that a lot of these moderns think is neglected in the prior systems that they're abandoning. Right? Aristotle doesn't give sufficient respect for this, Thomas doesn't, etc. So that's the critique to respond to. Philip? And then something very quick, Peter?
Well,
Philip first, then Peter and Jacob.
Partially went over it, just discussed this, but could the right anthropology help remedy whether or not we can get in the subject?
Okay, say the second word again. Can the what?
Right, like correct anthropology.
Anthropology, gotcha, okay.
Understanding of man as in a relationship with objects. Can that, kind of like what Felt gives in relational realism,
yeah.
Can that allow us to still have this, allow us to start in the subject, but still be able to end with knowledge in objects?
I think so. Now, we've talked about the sort of priority of epistemology and metaphysics, right? Metaphysics at the foundation and building epistemology on top of it. Do we begin with epistemology and then, fill in the gaps with whatever metaphysics we can accommodate, given our epistemological commitments and the limitations of them? My preference is to make anthropology foundational. So if you see my double circle diagram, which I haven't used as much this semester as I have in the past, right? I put anthropology in the center. Peter Kreeft has something similar, but he puts metaphysics in the center or at the foundation. And a lot of you, when we dealt with this in previous courses, challenged me on just that point. I think in some ways it all comes down to anthropology. It's a question of what the human person is. And we do have a kind of existential contact with this, right? I have a lived experience of being human that I can appeal to in giving an anthropology. So this may be the sort of the crisis of our time, is coming up with a coherent and correct philosophical anthropology of the human person. That may be where we disagree most profoundly. People after the Obergefell decision at the Supreme Court, there were some essays written by Robert George and others about the philosophical anthropology that seemed to be implicit in Justice Kennedy's reasoning in that decision. And that may be a bit of a reach to ascribe a coherent philosophy there. But I think playing with anthropological disputes are here. This may just be giving a different label to what's really a question about metaphysics or epistemology. Is it about the knowing capacity of the human person? Then it's an epistemological question. Is it about the actual nature of the human person? Then it's a metaphysical question. And if I want to know how I know that nature, it's also an epistemological question. So I may not actually make progress by shifting my ground here. So having said something in favor of that, I'll give you a few things against it, and maybe we can argue it out. Patrick, you wanted a point of clarification?
Yes, so my point is, when it comes to the subject, can we just acknowledge the fact that the subject exists and that we don't fully understand? Is that what you're trying to say, is that we can acknowledge that the subject is there, but we don't know much about it? So for example,
the anthropological point, or
no, just in general.
Well, the subject is there.
So
and then part of what Kant says is, look, there's been insufficient, we've sort of rushed right past the subject. He calls this a transcendental illusion. Part of what he argues is that not only is the transcendental illusion is this belief that we actually can have metaphysical knowledge of being itself. He says it's an illusion. It's a necessary illusion. It was inevitable and unavoidable that human minds, as they progress towards enlightenment, would fall into this error. But I'll say it's inevitable that they now have, with the advent of Kantian philosophy, realized the nature of that error and come up with a rational way to correct for it, which is by abandoning speculative metaphysics. So that's one response. Was there something more?
No, so the example that I was thinking of is that like for me, like I understand that like for example like bees exist or something like that, but I don't know much about like the function of say a bee.
Right.
So like being that is it important to understand the function of beings when looking at this?
These are two different categories of statement,
Uh-huh.
right? And the reason is that this is an other than me. This is an object in my world, and this is the center of my world, right? The realization that I exist. These are not commensurable statements. Right? This is existentially charged. And I'm sorry to get all existential on you here at the end of the semester. I can't help myself. Right? There's something about this statement and about this particular subject that is different from bees or quarks or Higgs bosons, right? All of which might exist or might not exist as objects in my world. I can subtract those objects from my world and then adjust. I can't subtract me from my world. I can't even really imagine my world without me, right? When I'm gone, my whole world is gone, right? Then the whole thing just folds in on itself, vanishes. Okay? It's no longer there. That's part of what it means to think, I think, in this modern sense, the post-Kantian sense, that there is a way in which there is a world constituted by each of us. Maybe we don't have then the sort of pure objectivity of knowing being as it is in itself. Maybe we have a kind of collective intersubjective sense of things, right? We have overlapping worlds. Your world contains most of the same objects as my world, right? Certainly within this classroom, right? I can see the people sitting behind you, but you're aware of them. Right? So there are 25 people in this room. There are for me as well as for you, but which one I am, as I look out through my world, and which one you are, radically different. So that's the way I wanted. When you mentioned bees exist, but I don't know quite what they are, that's different from saying I exist, but I don't know quite what I am. And that's you can tear the whole lid off the whole existential movement in the 19th and 20th centuries. For that, the question is there an important insight there that needs to be incorporated into my overall philosophical worldview? Is this central? Kierkegaard thought it was central. Right? Nietzsche, in his own sort of mad way, thought that this was central. Right? These guys are sort of proto-existentialist thinkers. You get some Catholic existentialists in the 20th century. Gabriel Marcel is one who argued that there is a sort of absolute priority of this individual subjective act of existing that I need to give sort of front and center place to in my philosophy, a philosophy that just blows right past that to begin talking about objective realities of being is missing something important, maybe the most important thing in philosophy. So that's it's bending in the direction of existentialism now. That's not an inevitable outcome of the Kantian turn, but one thing that becomes possible after it.